Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is ChessRabbitt, and I just got finished playing a game today, 1510 game on chess.com. And the standard games are rated 1410, and I was playing against a guy named Qxd3 who's rated 1444. Well, now after the game is, and I really didn't. I tried in this game, but I really didn't get a sense of doing anything spectacular in the game. But I had a winning position, and then one move I had a winning position, and the next move it was not a winning position, and pretty much the game was pretty even throughout the whole game until those moves happened, and then of course the tables turned. Um, it was a game where I really didn't calculate much or deeply until around move 29, and then I saw a great move, and of course, I didn't follow it up with a great move. My tendencies of being one, probably moving too fast, not really looking at all the variations, not thinking what my opponent can do, and the very next move, the very game that I won, I threw away. Anyway, I want to share this game with you because I think it's well, like I said, I really don't do a lot of my losses, so I don't want to look like I'm Kasparov or somebody. So I need to do some of my losses also. And this is one that pretty much was not the greatest win in the world. Anyway, here we go. So I start off with d4, d5, c4, knight f6, knight c3, e6, bishop g5, bishop e7, f3, castle, e3, h6, and bishop h4. All of this so far is all standard, is all theory. The next move, of course, by my opponent is not really theory. He should have played knight e4, and of course I would have in turn played bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop, probably c takes d4, followed by maybe knight, followed by e takes d4, or knight quite possibly followed by knight takes d4, c takes d4, or knight takes c3, and then b takes c3, and then e takes d5, and we both have isolated d pawns. As a matter of fact, let me show you what I mean on the board, just in case you guys don't understand what I mean. So we'll take, queen takes, I take here, my opponent could take here, I take here, and he takes back. And no, we won't have isolated queen pawns. I forgot about this move right here. Anyway, the resultant position will look something like this. Or if he takes here first, then I would probably more likely develop this piece, and then something like that would happen. And then from there, something like this would happen, and then probably this move would follow with a me castle. So the position would probably look like this. Anyway, instead of going knight e4, is what my opponent probably should have did, well, which is book and standard. He went knight c6, which is blocking this pawn here. So now this pawn can move forward. A better move probably would have been knight b d7 if he wished to maintain some superiority over d4. Why did he move knight c6? I don't know why. But it's not a terrible move, but it does block in the c7 pawn. Bishop b3, maintaining the getting my pieces out so I can castle and have this diagonal free. So when he comes to knight e4, we can do some trades, and I probably can trade. I probably wouldn't take the knight if it lands on d4, but if it does happen to land on e4, well, this bishop here is more or less just here so I can clear the way for castling. Pretty much what it's there for. And I always go to b3. So that's that. Pretty standard move for me, actually. b6, looking to fianchetto his light squared bishop on this side. Don't know if that's a good move, but his bishop is blocked right now with the move e6, so he's trying to free his bishop, either fianchetto it to b7 or take it all the way to a6 and trade on this diagonal here. C takes d5, E takes d5. Now he has a choice. He doesn't have to fianchetto his bishop any longer. He can actually move his bishop along this diagonal and keep some flexibility with this bishop, his light square bishop. Castle, bishop b7, so he fianchettos it and puts it behind his knight and behind his pawn. Rook c1, always clearing to get a half open file. So this move is just pretty much basically standard fare, just to grab the half open file. No real big deeper calculations there, really. Knight b4. I did think before I moved this move, Rook c1, to put this pawn here, sort of as a prophylactic move. I didn't do it. I didn't think my opponent would go knight b4 that quickly. I thought maybe he would do something else first, like maybe move the rook to e8, then knight b4. But he moved knight b4 pretty quickly. So, most masters when they do these analysis, they're always talking about, well, you should be moving a3 and h3, so soon. But it was pretty much appropriate like to move to keep knight b4 out of it. But he played it anyway, so oh well. I thought about it, but I didn't play it. Anyway, a3, putting the question to the knight. So what are you going to do, knight? He's going to take the bishop. I'll take back with the queen. Knight e4. Like I said, I'm not going to take this knight anyway. So you can jump there all you want, because I don't want this pawn to attack my queen and knight. Or if I just move here, and I wasn't going to take the knight. A fool would take the knight. So bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, knight d5. Looking to put pressure on this c7 pawn here. c6, moving back to c3, rook a, c8, knight b2, knight takes c3, rook takes c3. Now my plan is to take this rook, the f rook, and move rook f c8 and put more pressure on this b7 pawn here. And since I have a half open file, the rooks pretty much belong on these half open files. There is not a complete open file yet, but it's half open from my point of view. And of course, the half open file from Black's point of view is this e file, because he has no pawns on e file and I have no pawns on c file. But play pretty much is being generated on a c file right now because I have a rook there already, and we're putting pressure on this pawn. Rook c7, so my opponent is beginning to do the same thing to double up on the c file. Rook fc1, rook fc8, knight f3. The knight really wasn't doing much on d2, so I wanted to redirect my knight from d2 to f3 to e5. And if by chance he moves f6, then I was going to move my knight back to d3, which means I'll have to move my queen in succession. So that was my plan, to move the knight here to b3 to reroute it, to d3 rather, to reroute it. c5, c takes d5, b takes c5, queen b5. Now at first I was going to put this queen on e2, but I wanted it on a more active square, and I also wanted to challenge this pawn a little bit, and sort of to challenge this bishop if need be. I thought for a while, and this was pretty much the best move I can come up with. As a matter of fact, let's go back and see if we can kibitz this with Fritz and see if that was a good move, or what Fritz do. The computer suggests, looks like queen c2, or queen d2, and now I switch to h3 as his number one. H3, that's one of those deep grandmaster moves I really didn't consider. Queen c2 I considered. But I didn't think that was a good move, because I didn't want to trade, and then have the queen trade second and his queen trading last, and therefore I would be down a queener. He would have a queen and I would have a rook or something like that. So queen b5 is not the best move. The computer wouldn't have played it, but I did. So my opponent with queen b6, Then I went h3. I went h3 pretty much to give luft here, so I wouldn't have any back rake issues. After the trades here on the c file, then all of a sudden a lonely rook could come down and checkmate my king, so I played h3, which is probably why the computer wanted me to play h3 instead of queen b3 the last move, just to create luft here. So that's why I did it. Bishop a6, queen b3, bishop e2, queen d2. And now, like I said, I didn't do a whole lot of calculation here. I was pretty much reacting to my opponent, just moving my pieces out of the light squares and putting them on dark squares. Is pretty much what I was doing. So I didn't really do too much calculations really so far in the game. C4, queen c2, only square I could think of putting it at the moment, and to have some pressure on the c file here still. Bishop b3, queen d1, knight f6, knight f3, again with the idea of putting the knight on e5 and to attack the queen on b3. The only problem is this time I don't have any protection on the e5 square, so we can put the knight here and then try to block this pawn on d4 was another idea that I was speculating. So the knight f3, so if this bishop goes to e4, then I will put my knight on f3. I mean on d3. I mean on d4 here, and that way I blockade the this d pawn from advancing and moving into my position. Rook d7, knight d4, queen g3. Putting pressure on this square here. So if by chance this bishop comes here, there would be a segment here intersected at this square. So this square has to be protected. Also, it has to be, he's eyeing this square. I mean, he's eyeing this square for a checkmate, or maybe the bishop could come to this square, f5, and then sacrifice itself in e2, and I can't take it back because the pawn would be pinned. Some ideas like that. So actually, here's where the first time I really started thinking. I for some reason knew that there was some type of position here that I thought of, and I really looked. So I want you guys to pause the video for now. What is the best move for white to play in this position? And then when I come back, we'll give you the solution and what I thought. Okay, now that you've paused the video and you've taken a look at the position, I hope you come up with the move that I actually played in the game for once. Rook b3. The ideal here is if we all trade, let's say the queen takes. Okay, it was a new variation. Say queen takes, pawn takes, rook takes check. The king would move here, and I would be up a piece. See, I have a rook, and so I would be up a piece. If, let's say, if the bishop doesn't take or the queen doesn't take, let's say pawn takes, then we can still come up here with check. The king goes to a7, and I would be still a piece up. And I could probably come back down here and try to pick up the pawn. And then also you have a weak pawn on d5 also. So either way, I would pick up a piece. So I thought of this great move, and I actually played it. Rook takes d3, and the computer agrees, by the way, on that assessment. Rook b8. Now, here's where one move, I played a brilliant move, the best move ever, and the next move, I didn't. I could have simply won the game by just playing the simple Rook b2. Now, what that does, because this rook is bearing down on the b2 pawn, this pawn is threatening this rook. The only thing I had to do was move the rook back to protect the pawn. I didn't do that. Don't ask me why. This move, I play like Bobby Fischer, and this move I played like a real chess rabbit at Patzer. So instead of winning the game at rook, instead of winning the game with rook b2 with a piece up, I pretty much lose the game from here. Queen takes b3, queen takes b3, c takes b3, rook b1 to go after the pawn. Now, as you see, I have a knight and a rook for 2 rooks. My plan here, well, the game goes downhill from here, but it actually lasts pretty long. So I will pretty much talk and give you some of the highlights, but the game is pretty much, well, it's still even. If technically, if I could sort of fork the king and one of these rooks, and if I keep and if we sort of get rid of all these other pawns and keep the knight sort of close to my king in the end game, a knight and rook end game is actually a draw game, especially for humans. It's actually a drawn game if the knight is pretty close to the rook. Even though you have a rook which is worth 2 more pawns than a knight, the knight can hold off the rook if it stays close to the king. So it's pretty much a drawn game. I had one of those end games before in Indiana, and the guy was running around and running around and running around, and I said, listen, we could be doing this all day. Let's just call this game a draw. And he didn't want to do it, so we went on another 10 moves, and then he finally said, okay, I'll call it a draw. But he was unhappy about it. He thought he could win the position, but in all actuality, if you don't have the expertise in this position, you're not going to win it. So the knight and rook end game is still pretty much a draw, but I have to fork one of these rooks. I have to win one of these rooks. And if I don't win one of the rooks, well, then I could lose. Anyway, so I went on to play, and thank goodness for that loaf because it just came in handy. Anyway, we went on to play some more moves, so I will continue to play these moves, and I won the rook. Didn't fork it, but I did win it. So now all I need to do is grab a couple of these pawns, and hopefully we can come to a drawn endgame. But actually, here's where I started to lose, because I just could not. I mean, I could get one, but I couldn't get all. And eventually I just lose the game. But I'm showing you the rest of the game, but yeah, I couldn't win it. I mean, I'm getting better at end games, but yeah, I could have took them right there. Why can't I? Let's see why I can't. Oh, check. Okay, bam, bam. Okay, that was a check. That's why I couldn't take it. Okay. I thought I saw something there. Should have known. Anyway, here's where I decided to quit, because I pretty much can't stop this pawn from queening, and it would be checkmate soon thereafter. I probably could go knight f2 to try to shave off checkmate on that square, but in the long run, it's not going to happen. King takes g2, and I can't stop. Anyway, that's where I stopped. So that was the game. I hope you enjoyed it. But yeah, we'll go back to this move. If you have a winning position like that, there's a quote by Edmund Lasker, like the third, not the third, second world champion, fourth world champion, second world champion, one of those world champions. Lasker, he said, the hardest thing to do is to win in one position. But I won it in move 30, and by move 31, I lost the game. Incredible. Just incredible. Anyway, I hope you learned something from that. That's to always, if you have a plan, follow up on it. And I had a plan, and I don't know, I just messed it up. And I had 7 minutes on the clock, so I actually could have stayed there and calculated a little bit more. And actually, what I was thinking about doing was moving the rook back to this square, which is probably another loss, because if rook takes d2, then that's pretty much what I was afraid of, was losing this pawn and then losing this pawn over here. So That was what I was thinking. I didn't even think of rook d2, keeping that rook on the board, and keeping this rook on board and protecting the b2 pawn. So that was rook b2. I could have played and could have been a whole another story. I could have beaten this guy. Anyway, I lost some rating point, but okay, who cares? Anyway, that was a game that I lost. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave questions and comments at the bottom of the YouTube channel, and see you next time. Thank you and goodbye. ChessRabbitt out.
Play chess with ChessRabbitt.